Welcome back, everybody. As I did a few hours back, I'm going to be continuing reading Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. The only difference in style is going to be I had been reading an entire section in Greek after I read an entire section in English. And so instead, since these are longer sections, I'm going to read parts of each section going back and forth, mainly just for myself. If I read a paragraph in English and then the same paragraph in Greek, I can understand a good deal of what I'm reading in Greek. But if, especially in Aristotle, if I read the page after page and then go back and read the same page after page, I'm not going to be able to follow as easily myself. And I would imagine those who are trying to listen might have an even harder time with having a lot of Greek without any English. So we're going to try a paragraph at a time, where we're going to start at 1097A. And when it goes to 1097B, we will switch off and go back to Greek. That's going to be the plan. And then we'll try to use, I believe this is Stephanus's system of marking. So we will begin. Section 7, the good is final and self-sufficient. Happiness is defined. Let us return again to our investigation into the nature of the good which we are seeking. It is evidently something different in different actions and in each art. It is one thing in medicine, another in strategy, and another again in each of the other arts. What then is the good of each? Is it not that for the sake of which everything else is done? Is it not that for which everything else for the sake... Oh, sorry, let me reread this. Is it not that for the sake of which everything else is done? Okay, is it not that for which everything else is done? This means it is health in the case of medicine, victory in the case of strategy, a house in the case of building, a different thing in the case of different arts. And in all actions and choices, it is the end. For it is the sake of the end that all else is done. Thus, if there is some one end for all that we do, this would be the good attainable by action. If there are several ends, they will be the goods attainable by action. Or the good things, I suppose, if it's goods plural. Our argument has gradually progressed to the same point at which we were before, and we must try to clarify it still further. Since there are evidently several ends, and since we choose some of these, e.g. wealth, flutes, and instruments generally, as a means to something else, it is obvious that not all ends are final. The highest good, on the other hand, must be something final. Thus, if there is only one final end, this will be the good we are seeking. If there are several, it will be the most final and perfect of them. We call that which is pursued an end in itself more final than an end which is pursued for the sake of something else. And what is never chosen as a means to something else, we call more final than that which is chosen both as an end in itself and as a means to something else. What is always chosen as an end in itself and never as a means to something else is called final in an unqualified sense. This description seems to apply to happiness. Above all else, for we always choose happiness to an end in itself and never for the sake of something else. And thank you for whoever is watching. I stopped now that I reached the section 1097b in English. I'm going to start again in Greek and read again until I see that nice little marker 1097b, and I will switch back to reading English again. Pauline the Epenelthamen epitos etumen agathon. Tipoton e. Venetamengar alo in ali proxy. Ke techni. Alogar in yatriki. Ke stratidiki. Ke tes lipes omios. Ti unicastis tagathon. E ukarin talipa pratata. Tuto then yatriki men igia and stratidiki the niki and economiki the ikea and alo the alo and apasi the proxy k pro eresi totelos. Tutu gar anike tali pa pratusin pontus. Osta et tone proc tone abondon esti telos. Tutani to proc tone agathon eva pleo tofta. Metavenon the ologos is of tone, is tofton, afficta. Tuto theti malon theas fisa pirataon. Epi the pleo fenita tateli, tuton the erumathatina theateron. Eon pluton avlus ke almost ta organa velon os uk estipanda telia. To the Ariston telionti fenita. Osta emen stnt monon telion. Tut on tosi tumenon the pleo to teleotaton tuton. Teleotaton tuton. Teleoteron the legamen to kothov to the tone to the eteron ke tomi the pota the alo eritone tone ke koth of ta ke the of to eritone ke aplos the telion to koth of to eritone. Ai ke mi thepota the alo. Tiuton the evthemonia malistina thoki. Taftingar erumatha, i.e. the aftin, ke thepota the alo. Timin the ke ethonin ke nun ke pasan aratin erumatha. Men ke the afta methanos gar apovenondos limathon ekastone of tone erumatha the ketis evthemonias karin the atuton epolimvonondas evthominisin. And I think I read a little bit more. The 1097b, it was on a line that didn't have a period, so I'm not exactly sure where that's supposed to pick up. Maybe it's in the wrong place. So anyways, I'm just going to turn my heat down a little bit. And you can see I have a beautiful fire here. It's fake, but anyways, that is where I have it. All right, so continuing on in Aristotle in the English. Honor, pleasure, intelligence, And all virtue we choose partly for themselves. For we would choose each of them, even if no further advantage would accrue from them. But we also choose them partly for the sake of happiness, because we assume that it is through them that we will be happy. On the other hand, no one chooses happiness for the sake of honor, pleasure, and the like, nor as a means to anything at all. We arrive at the same conclusion if we approach the question from the standpoint of self-sufficiency. For the final and perfect good seems to be self-sufficient. However, we define something as self-sufficient not by reference to the self alone. We do not mean a man who lives his life in isolation, but a man who also lives with parents, children, a wife, and friends, and fellow citizens generally, since man is by nature a social and political being. But some limit must be set to these relationships. For if they are extended to include ancestors, descendants, and friends of friends, they will go on to infinity. However, this point must be reserved for investigation later. For the present, we define as self-sufficient that which taken by itself makes life something desirable and deficient in nothing. It is happiness, in our opinion, which fits this description. Moreover, happiness is of all things the one most desirable, and it is not counted as one good thing among many others. But if it were counted as one among many others, it is obvious that the addition of even the least of the good would make it more desirable. For the addition would produce an extra amount of good, and the greater amount of good is always more desirable than the lesser. We see then that happiness is something final and self-sufficient and the end of our actions. To call happiness the greatest good is perhaps a little trite, and a clearer account of what it is still required. Perhaps this is best done by first ascertaining the proper function of man. For just as the goodness and performance of a flute player, a sculptor, or any kind of expert, and generally of anyone who fulfills some function or performs some action, are thought to reside in his proper function, so the goodness and performance of man would seem to reside in whatever is his proper function. It is then possible that while a carpenter and a shoemaker have their own proper functions and spheres of action, man as man has none, but was left by nature a good for nothing without a function. Should we not assume that just as the eye, the hand, the foot, and in general each part of the body clearly has its proper function, so man too has some function over and above the functions of his parts? What can the function possibly be? Simply living? He shares that even with plants, but we are now looking for something peculiar to man. And that is the end of 1097b and begins 1098a. And so I'm going to read 1097b in Greek before I continue 1098a in English. Tinda ev the monian udis erita tuton chorin, udolos vialo. Fanita ve ke actis afterkias to afto simveni. Togar telion agathon afterkes ina thoki. To the afterkes legamen uk afta mono to zondi vion monondine ala ke go nefsi ke technis. Ke gine ki, ke olos tis filis, ke politas epidifisi politikon o anthropos. Tuton the lipteos oros tis. Epictenon di gar epitus gonis, ke tus apagonus, ke ton philon tus philus, is apiron proisin. Alatuto men isophthes episketeon. To the avtarkas tethemen o mo numenon eriton pe ton vio. Ke mithenos en thea tiuton the teen evthemonion iomatha ina. Eti the pondon eritotatin mi sin arithmumanin the thilon os eritotero. Meta tu elachistu tonagathon. Ip ochi gargathon gigdete to prosti themenon agathon the to meson eritoteron ai. Telion the tifenite ke afterkes e evthemonia ton prakton usatelos. Alisos tin menathomion to ariston legin. Homologumenon tifenite. Potheta the and argesteron tiesti eti lechthina. Taka the geniton tut e lifthii to ergon tu anthropu. Ospergar afliti ke agal mato pio ke pandi techniti ke olos onesti ergon t ke proxies. Ento ergo thoki tagathonina ke toev. Uto doxien on ke anthropo osperesti tiergon aftu. Poteron un tektonos men ke skiteos esti erga tina ke proxis anthropu thou then esti al orgon pefican. Ikatha per ophthalmu ke heroes ke pothos ke alos castu ton morion feniteti ergon. Uto ke anthropu porapanda tafta theetis on erguti. Tiun the tutani pote. Tomen garzin kinon ina fanita ketis fetis. Zitita theto idion. And that is the end of section 1097b in Greek. We're going to start 1098a in English before we continue it in Greek. And thank you for the two people who are watching. Again, this is Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. We are reading section 7, but instead of just reading it completely through, I am stopping at the intervals of the paragraphs that were originally sectioned off by Stephanus in the, I believe it was Stephanus in the 1500s. There was another printer that did some of the classics work, so it might have been a different printer. But one of the printers in the 1500s divided Aristotle and Plato into a bunch of different numbers. Whoever that was, were using those numbers and were stopping, switching back and forth between Greek and English at these wonderful stopping points. If anybody has questions in the chat, feel free to ask in the chat or say something. I will reply to the chat in between paragraphs. 1098a in English. Accordingly, the life of nutrition and growth must be excluded. Next in line, there is a life of sense perception. But this too, man has in common with the horse, the ox, and every animal. There remains then an active life of the rational element. The rational element has two parts. One is rational in that it obeys the rule of reason. The other in that it possesses and conceives rational rules. Since the expression, quote, life of the rational element, end quote, also can be used in two senses, we must make it clear that we mean a life determined by the activity as opposed to the mere possession of the rational element. For the activity, it seems, has a greater claim to be the function of man. The proper function of man, then, consists in the activity of the soul in conformity with a rational principle, or at least not without it. In speaking of the proper function of a given individual, we mean that it is the same in kind as the function of an individual who sets high standards for himself. The proper function of a harpist, for example, is the same as the function of a harpist who has set high standards for himself. The same applies to any and every group of individuals. The full attainment of excellence must be added to the mere function. In other words, the function of the harpist is to play the harp. The function of the harpist who has high standards is to play it well. On these assumptions, if we take the proper function of man to be a certain kind of life, and if this kind of life is an activity of the soul and consists in actions performed in conjunction with the rational element, and if a man of high standards is he who performs these actions well and properly, and if a function is well performed when it is performed in accordance with the excellence appropriate to it, we reach the conclusion that the good of man is an activity of the soul in conformity with excellence or virtue. And if there are several virtues, in conformity with the best and most complete. But we must add, quote, in a complete life, end quote, for one swallow does not make a spring, nor does one sunny day. Similarly, one day or a short time does not make a man blessed and happy. This will suffice as an outline of the good. For perhaps one ought to make a general sketch first and fill in the details afterwards. Once a good outline has been made, anyone, it seems, is capable of developing completing it in detail. Anyone is capable of developing and completing it in detail. And time is a good inventor or collaborator in such an effort. Advances in the arts, too, have come about in this way, for everyone can fill in gaps. We must also bear in mind what has been said above, namely, that one should not require precision in all pursuits alike, but in each field, precision varies with the matter under discussion, and should be required only to the extent to which it is appropriate to the investigation. A carpenter and a geometrician both want to find a right angle, but they do not want to find it in the same sense. The former wants to find it in to the extent to which it is useful for his work, the latter, wanting to see truth, tries to ascertain what it is and what sort of thing it is. We must likewise approach another sub. We must likewise approach other subjects in the same spirit, in order to prevent minor points from assuming a greater importance than the major tasks. And that is the end of section 1098A. Before we continue 1098B, we are going to read that same section in Greek and continue on with the section. Apharisteon ara tin te threptikin ke tin avxitikin zoin. Epomeni the esthetiki tis on fenete the keafti kini keipo ke voi ke pandizoo. Lipete the praktiki tis tu logon ekodos. Tu the tomen os epipithes logo. Todos ekon ke theanumnum. The tos the ke tutis legomenis tin kat energion thitao. Kyrioteron gar afti thoki legestho. Either stigar anthropopsychis energia kata logon mi anev logon. To the to famen ergon ina to geni to the sputheu. Osper Keith Aristu ke sputheu Keith Aristu ke aplos the tut epi pondon pros teeth amenis tis kata tinaratin iperokis pros toergon. Keith Aristu men gar Keith Arizin sputheu the toev. Either utos anthropu the teethamen ergon zoin tina. Taftin the psychis energion ke proxys metalogu sputheu the anthros ev tafta ke kalos. Ekastu thev katatin ikian oratin apotelite either uto to anthropinon agathon psychis energia gignita kata oratin either plius an arate kata tinaristin ke telistatin atida envio telio miagar helidon ear upi udemia imera uto the makarion ke evemona mia imera ligos chronos perigegrapho men tagathon tafti Voxia than pondos ina pro agagin the arthrosa ta kalos akonda ti perigraphi ke ochronos ton tiuton ev retis ke synergos agathosina othon ke ton technon gegonasin epithosis Pandosgar prosthena to elipon memnista the keton pro irimenon kri ketin akrivian mi omios en opposine epizitin al en castis kata tin ipokimenin ilin. He epitosuton f oson ikion t methodon. Kegotechnon ke geometris theopherondos epizitusi teen or theme. Omengar f oson crisimi prosto ergon o the tst e pionti theatis gar talithus. Tone of tone the tropon kentis alis piteon opos mita par ergoton ergon polio gignita. And that is the end of the section in Greek. So we will switch. I don't see anything in the chat. So we will finish out section 7. Nor should we demand to know a casual explanation in all matters alike. In some instances, when dealing with fundamental principles, it is sufficient to point out convincingly that such and such is in fact the case. The fact here is the primary thing and the fundamental principle. Some fundamental principles can be apprehended by induction, others by sense perception, others again by some sort of habituation, and others by still other means. We must try to get at each of them in a way naturally appropriate to it, and must be scrupulous in defining it correctly, because it is of great importance for the subsequent course of the discussion. Surely a good beginning is more than half the whole, and it comes to light, and as it comes to light, it sheds light on many problems. Before I read the Greek, I want to just mark this because I don't remember knowing that was from Aristotle. So I want to read again. It says, surely a good beginning is more than half the whole. This is a famous saying. This is a famous saying. So yeah, I did not realize that was Aristotle. So it's very interesting. So I'm going to mark this as. I recall saying like getting there's half the fun, something like that. Interesting. So that is the end of section 7 in English. I'm going to read the rest in Greek. And depending on how things go, I might actually start a new stream for section 8. My class only requires that I read 8, 9, and 10, skip 11 and 12, and then go to 13. So for time's sake, I might actually do that and then jump back around to the missing sections maybe once the semester's over or something crazy like that. So we will see how things go. Let us conclude with the very last part of section 7. Uk apiteon, thu tination en apasin omios al ikanon ntc to oti thina kalos ion ke peritas archas to the oti proton ke archi ton archon they men ep agogi the or runde a the aesthesi a the athismo tini ke ale the alos meti ana the pirateo acastas e pefficasin ke spu the steon opos the orithosi kalos megalin garacusi ropin pros ta epomena Though kigar pleon emisi tu pandos ina iarchi. Ke pola symphony gignis the aftis tone zitumenon. And so I'm just going to reread the part that says that the beginning, that would be iarchi, is ina pleon emisi, more than half tu pandos of everything. The beginning is more than half of everything. So it says, again, it seems to me, though key, gar, for it seems to me. Pleon emisi tu pandos ina iarchi. It seems to me more than half of everything is the beginning. And since it's an indirect statement, it has ina instead of estin, and it's in the nominative because, though key, does use ina. It's kind of the very beginning of the modern Greek ina is he, she, or it is. It's because in ancient Greek you would use ina for is if you say though ki, it seems, or though ki me, it seems to me, that iarchi ina, the beginning is, pleon emisi tu pandos, more than half of everything. And then eventually people started saying iarchi ina, the beginning is, without the though ki, and it replaced estin. So that's the short history of how ina replaces estin in modern Greek. Maybe a slow and gradual replacement from ancient Greek to modern Greek that transpired somewhere in the Middle Ages, probably over hundreds of years. And at first it was people just using the indirect statement incorrectly, and then eventually it took over and it became a standard. Okay, I do believe that I want to portion this out since this is over a half an hour. I'm going to stop the stream with section 7. We'll start a new stream for section 8. And then I believe we'll just go through a stream for 8, probably a new stream for 9, and a new stream for 10, skip 11 and 12, and then start back up with 13. Again, if I have time and effort, I might do some that is not required in my syllabus right here. But this is lengthy, and this is quite tedious, if you've noticed. I've been reading for about 2 hours now throughout the day with a little bit of a break. And I'm not finished. So this is quite tedious. So we will try to keep reading Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. Thank you for whoever's watching. And I will be back with another stream after a short break. So thank you all. And till then, I could say adio. I could say filia.